All right. Okay, so welcome to CJ 233, Introduction to Security. If you have questions at the end of this, then we'll go into that. Also, when he's done, then we'll finish up with Chapter 1, which is where we're at. So, without any further ado, bless you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. And if you'll speak loudly, because I don't know what the mic is going to do with us.
All right, not a problem. Hi, everybody. My name is Craig Painter. I'm campus safety here at Park University. I've been here since March. I've been doing security work on and off for about 23 years. I've been here since March. Started out part-time. I was a full-time officer at UMKC Police Department for 10 years. And then I came here. The pay's a little better and the benefits are quite a bit better. But I've worked every type of security out there as far as I know. I've worked contract security in hotels, apartments, in grocery stores. I've worked casinos out in Las Vegas, which is definitely different when it comes to security. I worked prison over here on the Kansas side in Lansing, Kansas. 10 years at UMKC was my first actual working at a large university. And then I've been here since March. Most of my time has been unarmed, which is pretty standard for most security, especially here in the city, in Kansas City, not Parkville, but Kansas City. I have carried weapons a few times. Various small little companies that do apartment patrols, they do grocery stores in not the best part of town. Yeah, just a little variety of anything and everything. And when you get to that point where you think you've seen everything, no, it'll be waiting for you the next night.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into the field of security, and then again, about how long have you been into it?
23 years.
And then the other agency you mentioned, the casino, didn't you mention hospital?
Yes, I worked at a hospital in the Kansas side in Johnson County for a while.
Okay. So what made you get into the field of security?
Well, when I got out of high school, I joined the military and ended up about a year and a half in, got medical discharge out. I broke my left ankle in 7 pieces. I got into, well, after I recuperated from that, I went to work with my mother, actually. She worked at Providence St. Margaret's, well, Providence Hospital now in Kansas City, Kansas. And a buddy of mine, he and I were kind of happy there. We were doing custodial work, but we were going out during the daytime and looking for something better. And just happened on a company that's no longer around, Wells Fargo Guard Service. Used to be down at 3rd and Main. And they put me right to work, and I started ever since. Actually, my first day was April 1st in 1991.
What did you start at, level-wise?
Level-wise?
Rank and pay?
Oh, rank was just guard, and pay back in the day was, I think I was making $5 an hour.
Big money.
Big money, big money. Actually, Wells Fargo was, being one of the bigger companies, was paying fairly decent. And we had, of course, with contract security, you might move from contract to contract. Most contracts are 2 years, so if somebody comes in next time the contract's up and underbids, you might either stay with the company you're with or swap over and go to the new company. So Wells Fargo, I started with JCPenney Warehouse, the big one out in Lenexa, and worked my first day out there, and they have quite a few delivery trucks, semi-trucks coming in. I think we had 185 that day. And so they had me training out in the parking lot, basically just setting trucks up to get into the dock so they could get unloaded and go. And got down to the last truck, and they said, hey, you need to tell him to come along. So I go up there, we were all on bicycles at the time, and I go knock on the window. I look in the window, and he must have been having a bad day. He took his head off. So he'd been sitting there since 7 a.m. and by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, yeah, he was smelling pretty good by that time. So they switched me over to, at the time, U.S. Sprint. Now I guess it's just Sprint, which was, we had 43 buildings at the time for Sprint, and so I got cross-trained at all 43 buildings. And then about a year later, they got underbid by Allied Security, which is now Allied Barton Security. And they liked me because I was cross-trained at all the buildings. A lot of the Wells Fargo folks stayed with Wells Fargo, whereas there were 6 or 8 of us that actually stayed with Allied once they took over the contract.
When you mentioned training, can you talk a little bit about what kind of training you actually got?
Most training is Working contract security is actually just for the facility. It's real basics. You learn the building, you learn the property. Most of those type of facilities, everybody has an ID like we have here at Park. Some IDs have access cards, some don't. Most people have hard keys at the time. And basically just making sure that your access control, that only employees are getting in, visitors stay where they're supposed to be. But most of the training is real basic. Here, watch this door, watch this parking lot, make sure nobody comes in the door. Real basic stuff. Most of the areas around here, actually almost every individual city has their own guard license. So you have to go to that city, go to their police department and actually take their little test, and it's a very basic common sense test, and get your guard license. Of course, it's a money-making thing. Kansas City, I believe, is up to $140 a year now, and there's no renewals. You get a new one every year. But Kansas City, Missouri has one. Kansas City, Kansas has one. Lenexa has one. Shawnee has one. Olathe has. So if you want to work in various sites, you've got to go get all these licenses. I mean, it's just a lot of paperwork. A lot of oh yeah, give me a license. They don't do a real heavy background check. They look for felonies, but other than that, they give about anybody a guard license to begin with. If you're working unarmed security, sitting in a parking lot or grocery store, the cities, their training is almost nil. They have you take a little 30-minute test on driving skills and what as a security guard you're allowed to do within their city limits, whether you have arrest powers, whether you can detain somebody, whether you can leave your property. Kansas City, Kansas is really bad about that because the chief of police of Kansas City, Kansas has his own guard company. So if you work for another guard company, they don't even let you leave the premises in uniform, or they'll arrest you for impersonating a police officer.
So is the training mainly there on site, OJD type stuff? Is
Yes.
there any training that's done off site or?
No.
And then you mentioned the certification for working in these particular areas, and those certifications don't carry over.
It used to be that Overland Park would accept anybody's. If you had any of the metro cities, they would accept it, but now they've actually gone to their own certification. And it's basically a money-making thing. A lot of times they'll actually take the paperwork you have from another city, just copy it onto theirs, take your picture, give you your license, and pay the person, and you got it.
So with regard to not just training, but also education, what's your educational background?
Formal education, college?
Yeah.
Very little.
Okay.
Actually, a lot of computers and a lot of drafting.
What then would you say you learned in your formal education that you've carried over into your career?
Security work is so fluid, so changing from day to day, from minute to minute, that it's more of the people you work with than the people that you work for, and each individual property that you work at. A lot of the stuff that you would go to school and go, oh yeah, this is black, this is white, doesn't happen in security.
You talked very briefly about armed versus unarmed.
Yes.
And what are the differences with regard to requirements to be armed or unarmed?
Kansas City, Missouri does their own specific training for armed security. They have you go through a 20-hour class. They have you go to their range with their range instructor, and you have to qualify just like a Kansas City, Missouri police officer would. Other cities are a little more lenient. When I worked at Bank Midwest when they had in-house security, and because we had a range master and we would go to the bullet hole, they would accept our range master's qualifications for any of our properties. But most cities do their own for armed. Unarmed, there's not a whole lot of qualifications. If you got a pulse and you get to work, if you got a car, they pretty much put you somewhere.
Within the various areas in which you work, what have you found to be your greatest challenges?
I would probably say the casinos in Las Vegas. There's a lot of fluid traffic. You've got a lot of locals that come to the casinos. I worked at a quote-unquote locals casino, even though we had a high traffic area from Asia and from Eastern Europe. But you've got your locals that live down the street that come into your casino every morning for breakfast or whatever the case may be. But then you've got people traveling from overseas or from out of state. And not everybody understands, and Las Vegas is actually a really strict town. If you were to walk from here across the street to Jimmy John's and you left your wallet here, they could arrest you till you could prove who you were. If you don't have a driver's license on you at all times, they can take you to jail. They can hold you for 24 hours. They want to know every person in the city at any given time. Other cities aren't as strict as Las Vegas is. Everybody has what they call a sheriff's card, which is security has one, cashiers have one, cocktail waitresses have to get a sheriff's card. They know where you're working at all times. You have to keep it updated. If you switch jobs, you've got 30 days to get it updated. Just with all the movement, all the changes, of course, it's a huge town in a small space. There's 3 times the amount of apartments in Las Vegas than there are houses. It's just people go there, they get a job, they work for a few months, they might get tired of it. Casinos seem like a fun place. Yeah, before that I'd go to the casino when they were here, and hey, yeah, it was fun, it was okay. Working in it is completely different. It's loud all the time. The ones in Las Vegas smoking's allowed, so they're smoke filled. Of course, there's no clocks anywhere in the building except in the employee dining room because they don't want you to take too much for your lunch. All the windows are blackened out, so nobody can see if it's daytime, nighttime, just to confuse the patrons on how long they've been in the casino. In fact, when I worked outside security at Sam's Town, we were told if somebody asks you if we have hotel rooms available, tell them you don't know, they'll have to go to the front desk. They've figured out, on average, walking from the parking lot to the hotel front desk and back, just to check to see if there's room, people spend $16. Just by, drop a quarter, drop a dollar, drop a whatever, just to see if they're being lucky that night. But people didn't understand all the rules and regulations. No minors, nobody under 21 in the gaming area. They could go to the restaurants, but they couldn't be in the gaming area. And that was, of course, especially the local Las Vegas kids, that was, hey, let's get in the casino and go gamble and see if we can get by with something small, because if you hit over $1,199, then it's taxable and it doesn't pay out. A slot foreman has to come over and pay you out. Well, then, of course, he's going to check your ID because he's got to do a 1040 form for your taxes to pay taxes on that amount. Oh, well, you're just a kid. You can't have this. Sorry, have a good day. Call security and they walk them out. But especially with foreign countries, we would take driver license from certain countries because not all driver's license from different countries have your date of birth on there. We would take passports because all passports have a date of birth, military IDs, of course any sheriff's card from Nevada because you have to be 21 to get a sheriff's card. But if people would go up to the room and leave all their stuff and come back down, if they looked under 40, we carded them. Do you have your ID? They look at you like, what? Sorry, do you have your ID? Yeah. Oh no, I left it in my room. Sorry, go get it. And people would get upset. Of course, especially from California, we had an actor in one night, and his daughter kept coming down while he was playing. And we kept, do you know who I am? I don't care who you are. It's a $150,000 fine if Gaming Control finds out we have a minor on the floor. So unless you're willing to write me a check for $150,000 I can hold, get her off the floor. And he threw a fit, and Gaming Control came out and said, sorry, casino's right, you're wrong. Either send her up to her room or get out of our town. Yeah, Las Vegas was definitely lots of turnover in the casinos. Lots of course, people stay a night, 2 nights, people stay a month, and depending on how good their luck was.
Since most of your time was spent as an unarmed security officer, how did you deal with irate or aggressive patrons, customers, or those
When I worked at a small casino called Whiskey Pete's, which was on the California-Nevada border, we had the privilege of a LAPD training officer come in and teach us a class called Verbal Judo. Very good class, very, very interesting class. I could go up to anybody, they could be ranting or raving. First thing you do, you diffuse it. You agree with them. Yeah, it's an unfair rule. I don't make the rules, I'm just a guard. And side with them, explaining that, yeah, you're in the wrong, but I understand. You diffuse it, half the time they'll say thank you before they leave. Even though you might be escorting them out the door because they violated a rule, or you might be saying, sorry, you can't be here. Yeah, you've got to talk them down, be unaggressive. Well, like, I've had a few students, nobody in here, who've gotten tickets. Yeah, and ticket prices have gone up this year, and they've said, oh, well, you know, you're an asshole. And I look at them, because they're aggressive, they're being aggressive. Oh, you're an asshole. You go, well, yeah, it's in my job description. And they're so taken back by that comment. They go, what? It's situations dispute. At that point in time, they're no longer aggressive. They're kind of trying to figure out what's going on. They're almost laughing. It's like, really? You just, yeah. But if you diffuse the situation and talk to them, explain you understand, instead of being aggressive right back to them, that's the easiest. Chris had talked about here, going armed. And why? Police department's a half block. You know, I'd rather talk somebody down than draw a weapon any day.
What are some of the benefits you have found regarding a career in security?
Well, you meet a lot of people, and you wouldn't think that, working here. Of course, I know quite a few of the students. I've been here since March. A lot of them know my name. A lot of them I know their names. Wonderful staff here. Work in the casinos in Las Vegas. I was the only one that felt comfortable driving. We had a stretch Lincoln limo. Everybody else was terrified of it. When I grew up on a farm, so I was used to 30,000-pound combine. So a little tiny limo, yeah, that's easy. So I got to go pick up VIPs at the hotel, at the airport. I go and take people to other casinos that we own within our company, Boyd Gaming, and take them to different restaurants. So I got to meet a lot of people. I've met Garth Brooks. I've met Ozzy Osbourne, which is actually, I'm a big fan of his anyway. Actors and actresses from California that come in that were friends of the casino manager or whatever, that would come in and get comped, dinners at different casinos, or we pick them up at the airport. In fact, I can't think of it. There's a race car driver. He's an older gentleman, about 6'2", always wears a cowboy hat and dark shades.
Richard Petty.
Richard Petty. For 2 years, every time that he came out, Samstown sponsored the Samstown 300 race, and he was their star attraction. And so I go pick him up at the airport, come back. Well, the third year, he had said it, make sure Craig comes pick me up. Okay, not a problem. Well, I was getting ready to go to work. My wife goes into labor. We had twins. I'm not going to work. I'm going to the hospital. So 3 o'clock in the morning, my cell phone rings. I answer. She's still in the delivery room. I go, yeah. He goes, where are you at? I'm at the hospital. You okay? Yeah. I go, my wife's having twins. Okay. And I didn't recognize the number. I didn't recognize the voice. And so I hang up. Well, the twins were early, but all twins are usually preemie. So we're in the NICU, and of course NICU, they're pretty strict. The nurses and security are really strict. Only family members come in, or if you have a guest that comes from out of town that wants to come see the babies, that's fine. The babies were maybe 3 hours old, and there's a knock on the glass. I turn around. Here's this big 6'2" tall guy, got the hospital gown, gloved up, got the mask, got the shades, and the cowboy hat. It's like, really? So I mean, just taking him back and forth to the racetrack in Las Vegas and picking him up in the airport. He actually came to the hospital to see me, check on the babies. That's like, really? And this is the world famous, race car driver, and but it just, people you meet, and people you hear about, oh yeah, he's great, he's this, and driving around. Or we had a concert at Samstown was a country western casino, and everybody just loved George Strait. Okay, I'm not much into country music, but okay, it's my job to guard the backstage. And he was back there, he was wanting a bottle of water, and I guess the cocktail waitress brought him the wrong brand of water. He took the bottle of water and threw it at her head. Found out that everybody loves George Strait, but he's an idiot. He's a jerk. He thinks he's above everybody else. It's like, really, I'm glad I got to see myself and my supervisor about to come out of the casino that night. It's like, do you know who I am? Don't care. You impact an employee, we can have you go to jail. You meet so many different types of people, especially in the casinos, that, here. When I worked Sprint, one weekend at the world headquarters down off of the Shawnee Mission Parkway. The guard I was working with, hey, we got to get a tow truck. There's a car parked in the president's spot. Okay, it's Saturday afternoon. The president's probably not here. I go, what kind of car? It's an old '64 Nova. Oh, don't call it a tow truck. That's the president's. What? Bill Esri was a Nova fan. He and his son used to take them and restore them and take them to car shows. And go, yeah, and he used to come. He was more friends with the guards than some of his VPs.
What are some common, or what are your personal or professional goals?
Well, actually, and don't repeat this, I'd like to take over as director of campus safety here eventually.
Heard it here first.
You know, with my experience, of course, you know, not only campus like at UMKC and here, it's just we deal with so many different folks, students here from Kansas City area, folks from out of town, folks from overseas. It just, you know, it's a really nice environment. I like the campus environment. UMKC was more a locals campus. They were boasting 32,000 students this year, and 22 or 23,000 of them were commuters. They live in Kansas City and they commute every day. We only had 4 dorms, and they were fairly small, smaller than Copley Quad. So just this type of atmosphere is, I think, is better than, because I never met, maybe for when I worked at School of Medicine, maybe 5 or 6 students that were from out of state, from out of the country. Other than that, there's just a lot more diversity here than there is at UMKC, but it's just a real family-oriented place to work.
One follow-up question.
Yes.
You mentioned that you were in the military when you broke your ankle in several places. Which branch were you in?
Army.
And then how did you break? This is just for my own knowledge.
Jumped out of a perfectly good airplane, as my father says, and my primary chute didn't open up, and by the time I got my secondary opened up, it was at Fort Benning in Georgia, and I caught my foot on a rock. It actually ripped my boot a half and down the seams. So, yeah, they said, you're no longer qualified to jump, you know, and then send me to Fort Living Room.
Okay. And then finally, any final thoughts that you have for the class before I turn it over to them for questions and answers?
I can void tickets if you have a good reason. Other than that, park where you're supposed to. Other than that, we're here to help if you guys need anything. Jump starts. We don't usually change tires, but we have an air tank if you need air put in your tire. Lockouts, we have a lockout kit. If you just want an escort, if you're here at 2 o'clock in the morning and you want somebody to walk you to your car, or if you're at the dorm and somebody freaky hanging around, call us. We're here 24/7.
And now I'll turn it over to the class at this time. What questions do you have for our guests? Yes, sir.
When you're talking armed versus unarmed, is that strictly armed with a gun and unarmed just without a gun? You can have a baton, knife.
Depends on the city. Kansas City, Missouri considers armed a gun only. They'll allow unarmed to carry batons, pepper spray. They're kind of particular on handcuffs. If you go through their 3-hour class, they'll let you carry handcuffs. They have a class called Controlled Force, which is takedown moves. If you go through that, they'll let you do that. Most of the time, unarmed security is pretty much hands-off. Armed security, in Kansas City, Missouri at least, is gun only.
That brought up another question that I didn't ask before with regard to training.
Yes.
You mentioned verbal judo,
Yes.
which is an external course that you attended. Did you do any other physical courses like PPT or pressure point techniques or combat?
We did a class at it. Actually, it was formed in Los Angeles. It came to Las Vegas, and the Metropolitan Police Department taught us a course called Controlled Force, and it's basically, they almost like wrestling moves, and instead of going and grappling with somebody, you're actually using their force to move them. So if they're coming to you, you grab and pull them whatever way they were going. Not as much pressure points as just putting them into a position where you can handcuff them or get them down and detain them. When I worked at the prison in Lansing, we carried, if you were in a tower, you had a 12 gauge and a Mini 14. They had 9mm, but that was mainly the SORT team, which is Special Operations Team. We all carried pepper spray 24/7 in the prison, which was, I mean, we all got sprayed with it, so we were all kind of used to it anyway. I went through taser school at UMKC, but I never carried the taser. The sergeants were the only ones that carried the taser, so definitely a fun class. You end up at the end of the class, you all get tased, so so y'all know what it feels like.
Okay. Any other questions from the class?
Compared to colleges of similar size and nature, Park has an extremely low incident rate. Why does Chris think it's a good idea to have armed security?
He wants to play with big boys. He thinks he treats us like UMKC or KU or MU or Columbia, whoever. That's who he likes to compete with, even though we're not the size, we're not in a downtown area. It's a very quiet area. There's UMKC, well, the other officer that I worked with this morning, he's a full-time UMKC police officer who works here part-time. And last night on his, he was sitting at at UMKC's parking lots, and a drunk came by and ran into a kid on a bicycle. It was unfortunately fatal, and the guy was belligerent. And it's like, okay, Parkville, you really don't have that. We still don't understand why he wants to go guns. He wants to get tasers. He went and bought radar guns. It's like, really? Yeah, the speed limit's 10 miles an hour. You know, you can kind of guesstimate, hey, you're driving a little fast. Not, oh, well, you were doing 17 and a 10. It just, he came from a university up in Minnesota, and I think it was I'm not familiar with the university. I think it was quite a bit bigger and more of a downtown type of area than what we are here, and so he got used to that facility going, oh, we have to have this, we have to have that. And my understanding when he came on, we used to have Securitas. When he came on Securitas, all their officers wore a vest. Like, really? Yeah, that's 30 pounds I really don't want to carry around all day if nothing's going on. They were unarmed, but I believe they carried batons.
Talking about here?
Here.
No.
No, they didn't carry batons?
Or vests.
Really? Because it was in Securitas's budget. They charged the university for vests. And vests aren't cheap.
Didn't have any vests.
It's okay, I'll edit that part. One last question, because it started out and I skipped over it. Proprietary versus contract, in your opinion, which is the better of the two?
When you have in-house security, you're kind of in control. You manage them. Yes, you're going to pay them a little more. You're going to have to cover their benefits. They're going to claim the taxes, their social security, whatever. But if you go to a contract security, you're paying this company. You're going to pay their rent on their office. You're going to pay for their electric bill. You're going to pay for their office staff. When Securitas was here, they were charging the university $20 an hour per guard hour. Plus, they were getting an extra 16 hours of what they called overtime and training pay. Even if they didn't train anybody, they still got, Securitas got that money from the university. Every uniform, every radio, the university paid for it. And when Securitas left, they took all that with them. And at least with in-house, if we had a gentleman quit the other night, he came and turned his uniform. So the university still has it. So therefore, when they hire somebody else, they can give it to the next guard.
Well, if there's no other questions, then I want to thank you for your time and sharing your information with us. Appreciate it.